Good morning, beloved. Today we delve into a powerful message that touches the heart of many as we reflect on the fleeting nature of time, relationships, and the often painful realization that we only begin to appreciate what we had once it's no longer within our grasp. The title of today's sermon is, "Now They Value Me, but I'm Already Gone." It's a strange thing how people can look you in the eye for years and not really see you. They can be around you, talk to you, laugh with you, and still be blind to the value you bring to the table. You cook the meals, send the messages, pick up the pieces, love them through their seasons, and still they act like what you give is disposable. And it's not always loud disrespect. Sometimes it's subtle, passive, quiet, almost invisible, but you feel it. The lack of appreciation, the taking for granted, the absence of gratitude. Then one day you stop showing up, you stop answering the late night calls, you stop chasing conversations, you go quiet, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And suddenly, the same people who were once too busy, too distracted, too comfortable to care, start to notice. They start asking where you are, start replaying the moments they miss, start valuing you. But now it's different, because you've left the space where your presence was unappreciated. It's human nature. We don't always cherish what's consistent. What's always available feels ordinary, and it's only when it's gone that we realize it was never ordinary at all. You were the glue. You were the quiet support. You were the one who made the effort feel effortless. But consistency doesn't mean unimportant. It means dependable, and dependable is rare. In the Bible, we are said to not cast our pearls before swine. What that means is, don't keep offering your heart, your loyalty, your effort to people who treat it like it's common. Pearls are precious. Just because someone doesn't see the value doesn't mean the value isn't there. Just means they're not ready or willing to recognize it. Jesus himself experienced this. In his own hometown, he wasn't honored. The people who had seen him grow up couldn't see the anointing in front of them. Familiarity blocked their faith. The same happens to you. The more you give, the more some people grow used to it. They forget it's a choice. They assume it's endless. They don't realize it's grace. But grace has boundaries. Even God allows doors to close. Even God turns people over to their choices. So when you finally walk away, not in anger, but in clarity, you're not being cruel. You're finally loving yourself the way God loves you, fully, deeply, and with wisdom. When people start to value you only after you're gone, it's not your fault. It's their failure to see the gift when it was right in front of them. And the real lesson? Let them remember you as the one who loved with fullness, gave with purity, and left with peace. Let your absence remind them of the presence they took for granted. Because when your value shows up after your departure, it was never you who lacked, it was them who were blind. There's a deep difference between being needed and being respected. Too often we confuse the two. We think that being needed means we are valued, that the more people rely on us, the more important we become. But that is a misconception. Being needed doesn't equate to being respected. It doesn't even mean you're being appreciated. It often means you're being used. If people only value you because they need something from you, then your worth becomes transactional. You are only as good as your last favor, your last gift, your last moment of availability. And while there is a time and place for giving, loving, and serving, there comes a moment when the pattern of being needed starts to wear on your soul. You begin to feel as though your worth is based not on who you are, but what you can offer. You are reduced to a role, a function, no longer seen as a person with dreams, needs, and a heart that deserves to be treated with respect. In Bible, we are told to love others as we love ourselves. That's not a call to be endlessly available to the point of exhaustion or to let others dictate our value based on their needs. Love, as Christ modeled, is self-sacrificial, but it's also healthy, balanced, and wise. Love doesn't mean constantly putting others' needs before your own at the cost of your peace, your joy, or your personal growth. When you're present with others, it's important to show up fully, not just to satisfy a need, but to be respected for who you are as you are. In relationships, whether family, friendships, or even work, it's not about being indispensable. It's about being acknowledged, being honored, and being seen for your inherent value. It's the recognition that you are a person, not a service. It's like when Jesus walked with his disciples. They were with him constantly, but he didn't just want to be needed by them. He wanted them to respect him, to honor his teachings, and to understand the purpose of his presence. His power was never just in his ability to meet their needs. It was in his ability to transform their hearts and minds. He was not only needed, but he was revered. His presence was a blessing, not because he provided what was asked for, but because he gave wisdom, understanding, and a deeper connection to the divine. In the Bible, we are told to not cast our pearls before swine, which teaches us that not everyone will recognize your worth. Not everyone will respect you simply because you're there. It's important to understand that being needed isn't the same as being respected. You don't need to prove your worth by constantly giving, by constantly showing up in ways that drain you. Your value is not in your ability to meet the demands of others, but in your own self-respect and the respect you command when you show up. Respect comes when people see you as a person who is worthy of time, energy, and honor. No strings attached, no hidden agenda. It's about the mutual exchange of value, not a one-sided dynamic where you give and they take and take. True respect is recognizing someone as equal, someone whose worth stands on its own, not dependent on constant service. This is the kind of relationship we are called to build. Not the one where we are needed, but the one where we are respected in our presence, appreciated in our silence, and valued for our essence. There are moments in life when words can no longer do justice to what we're feeling, when we've said everything that needs to be said, and yet somehow things still aren't understood. Our emotions, our thoughts, our hearts. They're often lost in the noise of daily life. We can speak truth, we can express our feelings, but until we make the decision to step back and allow space for reflection, it's hard for others to truly understand the depth of what we are experiencing. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is no statement at all. Sometimes it's the silence, the absence, that speaks louder than words ever could. It's in the moments where you choose not to engage, where you pull back, that the reality of your value and your presence hits people. We've all been in situations where we've felt taken for granted, where we've expressed ourselves over and over, only to be met with indifference. In those moments, our absence is the only way people begin to understand how much they've relied on us without truly appreciating us. In the Bible, we are said to let our light shine before others in a way that glorifies God. This means that our actions, our choices, our presence, when aligned with our faith, should be a living testimony. But there's a time when the light no longer needs to be continuously shining into spaces that won't reflect it. The light is not meant to be dimmed, but it also doesn't need to be continuously directed at those who refuse to see it. When you leave, when you step back from situations, that's when people start to notice what they were missing. It's when your absence creates a void, a silence that speaks louder than any word you could have said. People begin to reflect on what they had, what they ignored, and what they now feel in your absence. It's in the silence that they begin to ask themselves questions they might have avoided before. Jesus himself experienced this kind of absence. When he was crucified, the world went dark. People felt the weight of his absence more than they ever did when he was present. In the Bible, we are told that after his resurrection, his followers finally understood the full magnitude of his sacrifice. His absence led them to a deeper understanding of his presence, and it was in that gap, the space he left, that their faith was strengthened. There's a lesson in this. Sometimes, in order to teach others to value us, we must step back. We must create a void, not out of spite or anger, but out of clarity. When we are constantly available, constantly pouring ourselves out, we make it difficult for others to see our true worth. But when we step away, when we stop giving endlessly, we create an opportunity for people to reflect on what they had and didn't appreciate. The power of absence is not just in the quiet, it's in the clarity it brings. It's when you step out of the situation that people finally realize what they had in you all along. Your absence is not an attack, it's an invitation for them to reflect, to reconsider, and to recognize the value you offered that they might have taken for granted. In Bible, we are said to be careful with the time and energy we invest, understanding that there are seasons where giving without recognition is not the answer. Sometimes it's about trusting that the space you create will teach others what your presence could not. The way others treat us often reflects how we allow them to treat us. It's a hard truth, but an important one. We are not passive recipients of other people's behavior. In many ways, we are active participants in shaping how we are treated. Every time we tolerate disrespect, every time we allow someone to push boundaries, every time we stay in a relationship that devalues us, we are teaching others that it's acceptable to treat us that way. We often believe that we don't have a choice in how people treat us, that somehow others' actions are beyond our control. But the reality is, we do have a choice. We have the power to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to walk away when we are being mistreated. The way we allow others to treat us is a reflection of how we see ourselves, and it sends a powerful message about our worth. When we tolerate behavior that is less than we deserve, we are telling others that we do not value ourselves enough to walk away from the disrespect. But when we stand firm, when we refuse to accept anything less than respect, we are teaching others that our worth is non-negotiable. In Bible, we are told that we are made in God's image and likeness, which means our worth is inherent, not based on the opinions or actions of others. God has already set the standard for our value. If we truly understood this, we would never settle for anything less than the honor and respect we deserve. When we tolerate disrespect, we are ignoring our divine worth and allowing others to define us by their own standards. This doesn't mean that we are perfect or that we are above reproach. It means that we recognize our own worth and expect others to recognize it too. It means that we don't allow toxic behavior to take root in our relationships. It means that when someone crosses a line, we speak up and set clear boundaries. And when those boundaries are repeatedly ignored, we have the courage to walk away. In the Bible, we are said to not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but to transform ourselves by renewing our minds. Part of that transformation is learning to recognize the worth that God has placed in us. It's about shifting our thinking from a mindset of tolerance to one of respect. We are not called to tolerate disrespect or mistreatment in any form, but to live in a way that honors our own worth and reflects the value that God has placed in us. It's important to understand that we teach people how to treat us by what we tolerate, but we also teach them how to treat others by how we treat ourselves. When we show ourselves respect, others are more likely to show us respect. When we refuse to accept less than we deserve, we are setting a standard that says, I know my worth, and I expect you to recognize it too. If we continue to tolerate poor treatment, we are not only allowing ourselves to be mistreated, we are also perpetuating a cycle of disrespect. But when we stand firm, when we set boundaries, when we choose self-respect, we are breaking that cycle and teaching others to do the same. In Bible, we are said to love our neighbors as ourselves, and part of loving ourselves is refusing to tolerate behavior that undermines our dignity. By teaching others how to treat us, we are ultimately teaching them the value of respect, boundaries, and love. We show them that we are worthy of honor and that we will not settle for anything less than the best. This is how we set the stage for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. This is how we create an environment where love and respect can thrive. Walking away from a situation or relationship is not always a sign of weakness or failure. In fact, sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself. We often stay in situations far longer than we should because we're afraid of the consequences of leaving. We fear what others might think, or we worry about the void that might be left behind. But there comes a point when staying isn't a sacrifice. It's a disservice to our own well-being. In Bible, we are said that we should love others as we love ourselves. But here's the thing. We cannot fully love others if we do not first love ourselves. And self-love isn't about indulging in selfishness. It's about protecting your peace, your heart, and your mental health. Sometimes the most loving act toward others is recognizing when it's time to step away and preserve your own integrity. It's often said that we should fight for relationships, but not every relationship is worth fighting for. Not every situation deserves our energy, our time, or our heart. In fact, staying in environments that are toxic or draining only wears us down and makes us more vulnerable to resentment, bitterness, and a loss of self-worth. The act of walking away becomes an act of self-preservation, of honoring your value and refusing to settle for less than what you deserve. In Bible, we are said to lay down our burdens and come to God for rest. There are times in life when we are carrying the weight of a relationship, a friendship, or a situation that isn't fulfilling its purpose in our lives. Instead of lifting us up, it drags us down. And in those moments, walking away doesn't mean we've failed. It means we've chosen peace over pain. It means we've recognized that holding on to something or someone who is not serving our higher good is more damaging than letting go. It's important to remember that walking away is not about running from problems or avoiding challenges. It's about making the decision to protect your spirit, your mind, and your emotional health. We are not called to remain in situations where we are consistently drained, disrespected, or mistreated. Jesus himself set boundaries with people. He didn't tolerate disrespect, nor did he stay in places where he wasn't honored. He walked away from places that rejected him, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. He knew that sometimes walking away was the most loving thing he could do, not just for himself, but for those who were truly willing to listen. When you walk away from something that no longer serves you, you are making room for something better. You are choosing growth, healing, and peace over the chaos of staying in an unhealthy environment. It may be painful at first, but it's a step toward reclaiming your life, your joy, and your purpose. In Bible, we are said that there is a time for everything under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot. Walking away is often an act of uprooting, removing yourself from situations that have become toxic, unfruitful, or no longer aligned with your calling. When you choose to walk away, you are not abandoning anyone. You are simply making the decision to prioritize your own well-being. You are trusting that God will provide what you need and that you are worthy of peace, love, and respect. Walking away is not about being selfish. It's about being wise and loving toward yourself, knowing that sometimes the greatest act of love is stepping away from what is hurting you. There are times when words lose their power, when speaking feels futile and confrontation only deepens the divide. In those moments, silence and distance become the loudest and most profound statements we can make. It's in the absence of noise that the message becomes clear. Sometimes saying nothing at all can express more than 1,000 arguments ever could. The power of silence lies not in its emptiness, but in its ability to make others reflect, to make them feel the weight of your absence. When you stop engaging, when you no longer respond to the drama or the noise, you create space for clarity. Silence has a way of cutting through the clutter, of allowing people to sit with their own actions and words without distraction. It's often in that silence that people begin to realize the gravity of what they've lost. The distance you create, whether emotional, physical, or mental, becomes a gap that forces others to face the consequences of their behavior. In Bible, we are said that there is wisdom in being slow to speak and quick to listen. Silence allows us to hear more clearly, not just the words of others, but the condition of our own hearts. When we respond in anger, when we engage in unnecessary conflict, we often miss the deeper truth of the situation. But when we choose to be silent, when we withdraw from the noise, we give ourselves and others the space to reflect and make sense of things. Silence in this way is not passive, it is purposeful. It is a deliberate act that creates room for healing, for understanding, and for growth. We live in a world that values noise, opinions, arguments, debates, but sometimes the most profound lessons are taught in stillness. Distance too plays a key role in this. When you step back from a situation, when you stop chasing, when you refuse to engage in the same cycle, you're not retreating, you're asserting your need for peace. You are choosing to let the space between you and others speak louder than words ever could. Jesus himself modeled this kind of silent strength. When he was questioned, mocked, and misunderstood, he often remained silent. He did not engage with every provocation or demand an explanation. His silence was a form of strength, a refusal to be drawn into the drama and conflict that surrounded him. In Bible, we are said that in his silence, he demonstrated trust in God's will, showing that sometimes the best response to conflict is not to respond at all. Jesus knew that some battles are not worth fighting with words, that some confrontations are better handled by retreating into quiet strength. Silence isn't about avoiding confrontation because we are afraid. It's about choosing when and how to engage wisely. Distance is not a punishment. It's a way to reclaim our peace and invite others to recognize the consequences of their actions. When we choose not to engage in every argument or take part in every drama, we are showing others that their behavior won't dictate our emotional state. In Bible, we are said to turn the other cheek, not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to rise above petty conflicts. When you choose silence and distance, you are demonstrating that you are not defined by the noise around you, that you are choosing a higher path, one of wisdom and peace. It's in the space you create that others may come to understand, to reflect, and, hopefully, to change. Too often we look to others for validation. We seek approval, attention, and affirmation from the people around us, hoping that they will recognize our worth and give us the recognition we believe we deserve. But the truth is, your value is not determined by someone else's ability to see it. Your worth is not dependent on their perception or their recognition. It is inherent, given by God, and it stands firm whether or not others acknowledge it. In Bible, we are said that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. This means that from the moment we were created, God instilled in us an intrinsic value that cannot be diminished by the opinions or actions of others. Your worth does not fluctuate based on how others treat you, how they perceive you, or whether they understand your true value. It is constant, rooted in the truth that you are God's creation, and that is more than enough. The world can be quick to dismiss, to overlook, and to undervalue, but God sees you. Even when others don't understand your worth, He does. And in those moments when you feel unseen, unappreciated, or unnoticed, it is important to remind yourself that your value is not tied to someone else's ability to recognize it. Your worth was never meant to be defined by human standards. God's love for you and the value He has placed in you is immeasurable and unchanging. In Bible, we are said that God has plans for us. Plans for a future full of hope. This means that regardless of how others may perceive you or how your efforts might go unnoticed in the world, God has already ordained your path, and that path is full of purpose and potential. Your worth is not diminished by how others treat you, but is instead defined by the purpose you are walking in and the love God has already lavished on you. When we allow others' treatment of us to define our worth, we give them power over something that was never theirs to control. People will often misunderstand us, judge us, or fail to see the value in what we bring to the table. But that should never diminish our self-worth. It is not about what others see in us, but about recognizing the truth of who we are in God's eyes. His opinion of us is the only one that matters. And in His eyes, we are valuable, loved, and enough, just as we are. Jesus Himself experienced this. When He walked on earth, He was often misunderstood, rejected, and even mocked. The very people He came to save failed to see His true worth. But He knew His value not because of how people treated Him, but because of His relationship with His Father. In Bible, we are said that Jesus knew His identity, and it was in that identity that He found strength and purpose, even in the face of rejection and misunderstanding. He did not allow the limited vision of others to define who He was or what He was capable of. This truth should free you from the need to seek approval from people who may never see your worth. You do not need their affirmation to know that you are valuable. Your worth is unshaken, unmovable, and secure in the love of God. When you stop seeking validation from others, you allow yourself to live in the fullness of who you are, unencumbered by the need for external recognition. You are already worthy, and that worth cannot be taken away by anyone's failure to see it. Certainly, here is the expanded version of the 8th keynote. Your peace is worth more than your presence in spaces that drain you, in a 500-word format with Bible references seamlessly integrated. There is something powerful about peace. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict. It is a state of wholeness, a quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and where you stand. It's a gift, and it should be protected at all costs. Sometimes we find ourselves in spaces, whether they are relationships, workplaces, or even social circles that drain us. We may feel obligated to stay, to be present, to give more of ourselves, believing that our presence will make a difference. But what happens when that presence is no longer contributing positively to our lives? When we give so much of ourselves to others or to situations that we lose our peace. In those moments, it's crucial to remember that your peace is worth more than staying in spaces that drain you. In Bible, we are said to guard our hearts above all else, because from it flows the wellspring of life. This means that the peace in our hearts is sacred and it is worth protecting. When we allow ourselves to remain in environments that rob us of our peace, we are doing a disservice to our well-being and to the purpose God has for us. The Bible teaches us that God is not the author of confusion or disorder. His desire for us is to live in harmony, to experience peace that surpasses understanding. But to live in that peace, we must be intentional about where we invest our time, energy, and presence. We sometimes forget that we have the right to say no, to step away from situations and people that leave us feeling empty. There is wisdom in recognizing when your presence is no longer beneficial to either party. Just because you can be in a space doesn't mean you should be. Just because others expect your presence doesn't mean you are obligated to comply. Your peace is a treasure, and it should not be sacrificed for the sake of people, situations, or environments that do not honor your well-being. In Bible, we are said that when we face anxiety and restlessness, we are to cast our cares on God, knowing that He cares for us. It is when we feel overwhelmed, drained, and out of sync with our peace that we must stop and evaluate the spaces we are in. If a relationship, a job, or a community is constantly draining your peace, it's important to reassess its place in your life. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is to step back and take care of your own heart, to recognize that peace is a reflection of your relationship with God and your understanding of your value in His eyes. Jesus exemplified this in His own life. There were times when He withdrew from crowds, from demands, and from situations that would have drained Him. He understood the importance of retreating to a quiet place to recharge, to pray, and to reconnect with His Father. He knew that His peace and purpose were too important to be sacrificed in spaces that would not support His mission. In Bible, we are said to be still and know that God is God, a reminder that our peace comes from Him, and we are called to trust Him with every part of our lives, even the spaces that seek to take away our peace. When we realize that our peace is more valuable than our presence in draining spaces, we make room for God's peace to fill us. We free ourselves from the burden of trying to meet everyone's expectations, and we allow ourselves the freedom to choose where we invest our time and energy. Your peace should never be a bargaining chip, and it is worth more than staying in any environment that compromises it.